Evolution is a staple part of the Pokemon franchise. Through battle, friendship, or even certain items, a Pokemon's form will change and they get more powerful as a result, right? We all love it. Well, wrong. Well, I'm here to tell you that if you evolved any one of these Pokemon in question, you made a massive mistake. Let me tell you why. This Growlithe card is very cute, make no mistake about it. The Heart Gold Soul Silver art style is in full swing here, but when this card was standard legal all the way back in 2010, you could make one of the biggest mistakes I've ever seen in a Pokemon trading card game. You see, let's take a detailed look at this card. So, 70 HP is nice, 1 energy to deal 10 damage is, well, average, and 3 energy to deal 40 damage for combustion is not bad. Let's take a mental note of these stats. Okay, so if you was to evolve this Growlithe into this Arcanine card, let's see what happens. So, for all our troubles, we gained a mind-altering 10 HP. Wow, I mean, that's bad. But the real monstrosity here is now our combustion attack has now gotten worse. Since if we wanted to deal the same 40 damage we did before, we have to attach another energy. Yep, this Arcanine card requires 4 energy to deal 40 damage when the Growlithe can do that with 3 energy. So that's a mind-numbing 10 damage per energy on a final stage evolution card. And just for context, Hitmonchan, who came out in the very first set of the Pokemon TCG all the way back in 1999, was meta-defining for its ability to deal 20 damage for 1 energy on a basic Pokemon. This Arcanine card 11 years later would get demolished by that Hitmonchan from base set. Pitiful. And Arcanine also gains a retreat cost just for the funsies, oh my goodness. Dragonair from Sun and Moon had the really cool attack Dragon's Wish, which let you attach as many energy cards from your hand to your Pokemon during your next turn. This resulted in a very fun playstyle where you would rush Dragonair out as fast as possible and then explode a ton of energy into play onto your attackers of choice. The main attacker we saw was Darkrai EX, who did 20 plus 20 for each dark energy you had in play with its attack Dark Pulse. So, you would use Dragon Wish, then attach a ton of dark energy to Darkrai or whatever you like, so Dark Pulse would swing for massive KOs. But what would happen if your Dragonair survived and you decided to evolve it? Well, it might be a mistake, but let's have a look. Dragonite from the same set was not a very good card. Dragon Wave had some fun synergy with double Dragon Energy, but it would require some healing cards to make work that Darkrai EX just didn't really want to play. So let's have a look at that second attack. For a monumental 5 energy, Giant Tail did 200 damage. Okay, well that actually KOs most of the basics in formats, not bad. But wait, there is some text there. Flip a coin. If Tails, this attack does nothing. Oh, so you could attach all those energy, then flip Tails and do 0 damage. Meaning that your opponent then most likely KOs Dragonite, removing that potential 100 damage from your Darkrai's Dark Pulse. Makes absolutely 0 sense, and it was way too risky. And we will actually be hearing from Dragonite later on. First though, I want to take your attention to this Cleffa card. Believe it or not, this little geezer saved the Pokemon trading card game. You see, before Neo Genesis, the format was filled with hand denial cards, like Rocket Sneak Attack, that let you flip a coin. If heads, you would shuffle away 3 cards at random from your opponent's hand back into their deck. Wow. And then Rocket's Trap, that let you shuffle away 1 trainer card from your opponent's hand back into their deck also. This meant if you was going second, you often started the game with very little, or most likely, no cards in your hand, which was very, very bad. Cleffa changed that though, since his Eek attack let you shuffle away your hand and draw 7 new cards, just for a single energy. This meant as long as you led Cleffa and had a single energy in your hand, you could escape your opponent's hand lock and get straight back in the game. But with a pitiful 30 HP, you might think evolving Cleffa into Clefairy would be a good idea, right? Well, let me tell you why that would be a very bad idea. Well, the Clefairy in Neo Genesis is actually treated like a basic Pokemon, so you didn't even need to utilize Cleffa to put it into play. But let's say you really wanted to, since Cleffa is super small and, well, defenseless. Well, for your trouble, you would gain 20 HP, which is rubbish, and you gain the attack Double Slap, which again is very low powered, and the Square Dance attack, which doesn't actually deal damage, but it searches up basic energy cards from your deck and put them into your hand via again numerous coin flips, which really doesn't move the needle much. But I can hear you saying the 50 HP is worth it alone, so it's much harder for your opponent to KO. Well, you might be correct, but you might also be wrong. Well, you see, Cleffa had the baby Pokemon rule, which would let you flip a coin when your opponent decides to attack into Cleffa. If that coin flip is tails, your opponent's attack fails, their turn ends, and your turn starts immediately, essentially wasting their attack. And since 50 HP wasn't a hard number to hit back in the day, it was actually much safer for you to stay as a Cleffa and put all incoming attacks on coin flips than to evolve into Clefairy. Not to mention, Cleffa also has a free retreat cost too. Mega Gengar EX was one of the first cards to release with a Spirit Link tool card. This was so you could Mega Evolve your Pokemon without ending your turn, which is fantastic, right? Well, wrong. Mega Gengar had the Phantom Gate attack, which would let you use one of your opponent's attacks as this attack. This could have some uses, but often your opponent could play around it by not benching any Pokemon that Phantom Gate could take advantage of. For example, if your opponent was playing a Fairies deck, they could only have Xerneas, Aromatisse, Spritzee, and Florges EX in play, and Mega Gengar would be straight out of luck, since Bright Garden requires you to have Fairy or Grass type Pokemon in play that you won't have because you are playing exclusively Psychic types. This led to Mega Gengar seeing zero competitive play. But Gengar EX, well, that did. Dark Corridor would deal 60 damage and poison your opponent's active, and switch your active too. So you would deal serious damage and promote whatever you like into the active spot. This saw play with Trevenant from XY base set, since while it was in the active, your opponent couldn't play any item cards. That would really slow them down. Not only that, but Dark Corridor had amazing synergy with Burbank City Gym, which would boost poison damage by 20. So if your Gengar EX had a Muscle Band and a Burbank City Gym, you would actually deal 110 damage, which would two-shot the entire format. This Gengar Trev deck was very successful and was one of the only decks that could go toe-to-toe with the Seismitoad Slurpuff deck, which ended up forcing TPCI to ban Lissandre's Trump card, by the way. So yeah, Gengar EX good, Mega Gengar EX bad. Funnily enough, the other Mega Pokemon from Phantom Forces was Mega Manectric EX, which also got heavily outshone by its basic EX card too. Turbo Bolt was actually a really good attack though, accelerating 2 basic energies from your deck to your bench Pokemon, which did see a ton of play realistically with partners such as Ho-Oh EX, Wobbuffet from Phantom Forces, and Regice too. But it's safe to say that none of those decks saw more play than the baby Manectric EX, which was definitely the most successful card. Overrun was very useful, dealing 20 damage to the active and 20 to a bench Pokemon. This would help set up multi-prize turns against low HP decks like Night March and Vespiquen. But the star of the show was Assault Laser. This would deal 60 damage plus 60 more if your opponent's active had any tool cards attached, which they normally did. And if they didn't, you could force them to have a head ringer, which would actually increase their attack cost and make Manectric EX hit harder. One of the rare cards that you could put onto your opponent's Pokemon. Manectric saw play as a standalone deck, with the Crobat line from Phantom Forces to chip in extra damage and make that Assault Laser start to threaten one-shots, which really wasn't hard by the way. But its greatest success was when it was paired with Seismitoad and Crobat. Seismitoad EX was a devastating card. Quaking Punch would deal 30 damage and it would prevent your opponent from playing any item cards. So if you started playing Burbank City Gym, Hypnotoxic Laser, Muscle Band, not only would Quaking Punch do a lot of damage, but Assault Laser could also come in the mid to late game and clean up whatever your opponent had left, with Crobat helping out too. And make sure to check out this video sponsors Dragon Shield for the best accessories in the game. Make sure to use that link in the description and use code BURST to get 5% off. Also help support the channel as well. Erika's Dratini was released all the way back in Gym Heroes, and it looks rather underwhelming, right? 40 HP and an underpowered attack. Well, to be fair, it was all about its Pokemon power Strange Barrier, which would reduce all damage done to it from your opponent's basic Pokemon down to 10. So it doesn't matter how much damage your opponent's doing, if it was into Erika's Dratini, it was only doing 10. This was amazing since it was a good defense against Erika's Jigglypuff, which funnily enough was running rampant at the time, one-shotting everything in format with its pooled punch attack and plus powers. And this was slightly before Cleffa was printed, so most likely you didn't have much of a hand due to all those pesky rocket cards I mentioned earlier. So what you would do is jam Dratini into the active and sit back and buy some time as you could gather some resources. Fantastic. However, if you would evolve into Erica's Dragonair, you just made a massive mistake, you silly person, because you lost that valuable Pokemon power. And Erica must not have had enough gym badges, because Blizzard from Dragonair would actually do damage to all your Pokemon 50% of the time. And while Takeaway is kind of interesting, for 4 energy it really wasn't worth the investment. But speaking of Dratini, Dragonite's going to make another appearance here today, but this time is via Dragonite V. Dragonite V was a fantastic card. Dragon's Gale would hit for 250 on a basic Pokemon, which is a fantastic number because it would KO all your opponent's evolving V Pokemon nice and early as the first turn of the game, if you manage to get 7 cards into your loss zone, because if you did, you could then play Mirage Gate to accelerate the energy to it. This actually wasn't that hard to do, since you would have Comfey, Scoop Up Net, Chorus Experiment, and Lost Vacuum, all of which would turbo cards into your lost zone. And it was this punchy, immediate 250 damage on a basic Pokemon that made Dragonite V good. And you would lose all of that if you evolved Dragonite V into Dragonite V Star. Since in order to now deal that same 250 damage again, after evolving, which to be fair is the bare minimum by the way, you would have to do the unthinkable and attach another energy card. Diabolical. And you would only gain 50 HP for your troubles. Now, to be fair, if Draconic Star was a V-Star ability and not an attack, we actually might be having a conversation as to why this card is good. But instead it was an attack, and it wasn't even guaranteed. And since it could only accelerate certain types of energy, it meant you was limited too. So bad. Keep your Dragonite as a Dragonite V. Mega Lucario looks stunning. Hefty HP. Strong attack that would discard energy from your opponent's active. And with strong energy, Fighting Stage and Muscle Belt, you'd actually be threatening one-shots too. The massive problem here was that there was no Spirit Link for Mega Lucario. So if you wanted to evolve into it, you would give up your turn. So was it worth it? 100% not. Lucario EX was a great standalone attacker with 3 good attacks. Missile Jab would deal 30 damage and it would ignore resistance, so you would often pick up cheeky KOs on Zubats if you had strong energy or muscle band attached. Somersault Kick would add up nicely if you had the same muscle belt, strong energy and Fighting Stadium, but the real selling point was Corkscrew Smash. This would deal 60 damage and would let you draw till you had 6 cards in your hand. With strong energy and all that jazz, you would be two-shotting your opponent's Pokemon while you were also drawing cards. This would let you play supporters like Corena and Lysandre more liberally, since Lucario would be drawing you the cards so you could rely on their searching or aggressive tendencies. Lucario was mostly paired with the Crobat lines from Phantom Forces, as these would chip in the extra damage and start to push Lucario's offensive output to dizzying heights, meaning Mega Lucario got left in the dust and would never be put into play. Last up, we have a card that hasn't even been released yet, Metang. This Metang has the Metal Maker ability, which will let you look at the top 4 cards of your deck and attach as many metal energy you find there to your Pokemon in any way you like. This is some insane energy acceleration, and it might actually put Dialga V-Star to be relevant again, since now you have a reliable way to power up Star Chronos, which will KO your opponent's active most of the time, and would let you take an immediate next turn, which is terrifying. The Metagross in the same set is okay, dealing 200 damage for 4 energy, but it would only ever be used in a very desperate situation, meaning you will most likely want your Metang in play for most of the game. The same can be said for Electric from Noble Victories. It had the Dynamotor ability, which should let you attach 1 lightning energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon once per turn. This saw a lot of play with Zekrom and Rayquaza EX, both of which were super energy hungry, and both of which were much more scarier than the Electros, who would deal a pathetic 90 damage for 3 energy. Let's just compare that to Zekrom, who would deal 120 damage for 3 energy whilst being a basic Pokemon. It makes no sense to me. Flaffy also had the Dynamotor ability, which did the same thing as Electric, except this time it was way more in the future in Evolving Skies. This would let you attach energy to Miraidon EX, Raikou V and Iron Hands EX too. And this led to Miraidon being one of the best decks in the game, no questions asked. Although it was very rare to see Ampharos make an appearance in those Miraidon decks. Ampharos EX was okay though, but you'd have to be in a desperate situation for it to be your best attacker of choice. But to be fair, it's probably the most playable out of all the cards on this list. So have you made any of those mistakes? Let me know in the comments, you silly people. If you want to see a big video where we look at the best and worst cards from every single Pokemon set, make sure to click that video there. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.